Okay, in these various methods of limiting intervals in chords, we mentioned mirror harmony a little earlier, but we only looked at it with 3 notes. Now let's talk about mirror harmony with larger structures. It's important, however, to realize that in this kind of harmony, since it radiates out from the middle rather than from the base, okay, the spacing counts a lot. In other words, if I take the same notes that in theory make up a mirror chord, and if I distribute them all over different registers, nobody will notice the effect of the mirror. We will see that shortly. Okay, so let's have a look and see how this works. Let's look at example 12a. Well, in 12a, the right hand and the left hand are doing the same chords, but inverted. Look at the first example in 12a. So minor third, perfect fourth, minor third. Same thing going down. Minor third, perfect fourth, minor third. So if I play them together, okay, it has a curious complexion, and that's typical of mirror chords. All right? Then example 12a, the second chord. Again, you can hear a certain symmetry there, even though they're quite dense chords. Okay? But that's because of the spacing. 12a, third chord. Again. And then the last one. Again together. So if you look at all of these chords, they all radiate out from the D in the middle. The D is the axis of symmetry. And they give you rather interesting kinds of harmony. You might not even want to do a whole section of a piece in mirror harmony, but sometimes just trying out these chords can suggest interesting possibilities for use somewhere else in a piece. So that's one possibility. Some things to notice about mirrored chords. In 12b, the first chord is a major chord on the right hand and a minor chord on the left hand. Notice that a minor chord is just a mirror of a major chord in the other direction. So major third, minor third, major third, minor third. So triads change quality when you mirror them. A fourth chord stays a fourth chord, but it's inverted. And a chord in seconds stays a chord in seconds. So that's something to be aware of. Now if we start experimenting with other dispositions, other arrangements, look at example 12c here. Here we have inversions of triads mirrored. As we can see, inversions of triads give polychords because the notes given by the inversion aren't the same notes given by the original position. So again, that's an interesting possibility for polychords. If you take a polychord itself and invert it, it gives a fancier polychord. Okay? This is not something you're going to use very often because the chord bit is very dense, but occasionally it can give interesting sonorities. Another thing is, when you're writing a phrase in mirror harmony, you have 2 possibilities for the way you organize the symmetry. If you look at example 12e, in 12e, the first half of the phrase is mirrored around middle C. The C is not part of the chord, but if you look at all the chords, the axis of symmetry is middle C. In the second half of the phrase, the mirror is A. Let's listen to 12e. Okay, so if you look at the chords, you'll notice that each chord is mirrored around the axis of symmetry. It's not necessary that the listener be aware of the axis of symmetry, but from the point of view of the composer, this is one way of organizing things. Now for a different approach, let's look at 12f. Let's listen. In 12f, the axis of symmetry is always changing. What I've done is, I've simply indicated by writing it out in the middle, E flat D, E flat D, D, C sharp D. The note that I've written in the middle is the axis of symmetry. It is not present in the actual chord, but it's just the note about which I made the inversion. This also gives some interesting kinds of harmonies. Let's listen again to 12F. Okay, so having looked at these possibilities of mirror harmony, you can see that they give interesting sonorities and often to be quite useful, especially for a small portion of the piece. It's notable that it's pretty rare to have a whole piece done in mirror harmony unless it's a very short piece, because after a while it constrains you quite a bit. We're going to be talking in the last lesson in the course, about how to combine different kinds of harmony in the same piece. But that, as I said, is a topic for later.